Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UPNradio.com.
She's passionate about telling stories of amazing women who are rocking the world and empowering women to live, love, and thrive. Here's your host, Katherine Gray.
Hi, welcome everybody to Live, Love, Thrive Women's Empowerment Hour, brought to you by 360 Karma. We hope you're joining us on Facebook and, of course, following us on our Twitter and Instagram at My360Karma. Today, I have a woman on who has a fascinating story. I'm so excited to have her on today. She's a writer and a director here in Hollywood. Please give a warm welcome to Gigi Gaston. Hi, Gigi. How are you?
How are you?
Good, good. I'm so happy to finally get you. I know your schedule is super uber busy. And I'm happy
LA traffic.
Yeah, I'm happy to grab you for a half hour and get to chat with you about your really fascinating and interesting life. You know, you yourself are so accomplished. You had shared with me that you are the highest paid spec writer female in Hollywood. Meaning,
was.
Which means you wrote all these spec plays. They got picked up. I mean, not plays, screenplays for movies, and they got picked up. You got paid for them handsomely, but they didn't get made until now.
Right.
You're getting ready to actually not only have it made, but direct your first movie.
Yes.
But you've also directed and produced a documentary that was about your ex-lover, Sophie B. Hawkins.
But at the time, of starting it, it wasn't that situation.
Right. It evolved into that. Yeah. And then, you've done other interesting projects, video. I need a music video for Olivia Newton-John.
That was great.
And and produced some plays, including the musical with Sophie, which was JANIS Joplin.
Right.
Correct?
Room 105.
Yeah. Right here in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, that was that. Actually, the play. I mean, everything I've ever done has been an amazing experience, both internally and externally. And you kind of always pray for obstacles, because obstacles make you better and make your craft better and actually make the product better. But the play was a really special thing, because that came out of the blue. Like one night I was listening to Janis Joplin's music. I was never a fan of hers. I mean, not that I wasn't not a fan of hers, but I just didn't have her all over. I mean, I didn't have her all over my bedroom. You know what I mean? As a kid, did I love her? Sure. But I wasn't like obsessed.
Right.
I'm listening to these songs, and then suddenly I go, I have to write a play.
Yeah.
And I just started writing a play from the songs.
Now, did you know Sophie then when you wrote the play?
Oh, yeah. We had been living together for,
I
think, 15 years.
And for people that don't know Sophie B. Hawkins, she's a Grammy-nominated singer. And so what a perfect person to put in that role of Janis Joplin.
Oh, yeah. She was perfect for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote it. I spent a month locked in a room writing it, and then I had her read it, and she couldn't believe it. And then this guy who was a friend of mine and was doing business on another project came in, and I read him he came with his wife visiting. They were from New Orleans, and I read him a couple scenes and played some of the songs, and Sophie had recorded some by then, and he was like, I'm in, I'll produce it.
Wow.
I know.
Fantastic.
So it was kismet, and it was so great, because what you learn from plays that you don't get from films, and not that I've gotten a film that I wrote produced yet, which is happening now, because I think I was before my time.
Which is super exciting, because it is the time of the women in Hollywood. Yes. So it's about time you're getting one of them produced. Yeah. And not, how exciting that you get to direct it. And I know you were telling me that actually one of your director mentors, we have a picture of, was
Gary Marshall.
Was Gary Marshall. I mean, wow, does it get any better than that? What a great mentor.
No, he was amazing, and he helped me with a comedy, of course. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing about Gary that was so amazing is that my very first spec script, this is kind of interesting to sell, was because it was the time of male writers. Now we're in the time of female writers and females getting to direct and, diversity and all this great stuff. Well, in those days, it was all male-driven, and my first script I'd ever written was a sci-fi action movie, which there were no female writers that did that.
Right. No, that was trailblazing.
So I was trying to I didn't have an agent or anyone at the time, so I went to CAA, and I knew someone through a friend of mine, Danielle Thomas, who's now a big manager at Untitled. So I went to CAA, visited this guy. I sent him the script. He loved it, right?
Yeah.
But I changed my name. I made my name a male name.
Oh my gosh.
My name was George Dupin because George Sand's original name was Dupin, and I thought no one will catch this, right?
Yeah.
So he calls me up and he goes, "I love the script. I've got to meet George. Bring him in." And I said, "Okay, I'll bring him in." And I walked in the room, and Ken was like, "Where's George?" And I'm like, "I'm George." And he said, "You wrote this?" And I had never written before.
Oh my God.
And I wrote it.
Brilliant.
No, this is how I see. That's what I'm talking about. Obstacles.
Yeah.
Like anybody out there, if you have obstacles, embrace them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because obstacles.
I love how you beat the system. That
can
was
change
great.
your whole life.
Yeah.
But how that happened was, I was doing something else in New York. I was actually studying to be an Olympic equestrian.
Right.
And I'd been on the Olympic team, in training.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. And I was also studying acting to learn how to write.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, you told me about
So
that.
long story short is, I was waiting tables in New York. I go home to walk my dog. 2 people had walked out on my table, right? So I was in a bad mood.
Yeah.
A guy comes up to rob me.
In other words, you're a great writer. You're an awful waitress.
Yes. and a guy comes up to me. I don't know if you guys can see this. He's like this, right? And he goes, "Give me your money." I'm walking my Jack Russell, okay, on Bleecker Street. And I was like, "Blank you.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you SHI, you know what,
Yeah.
unless you give me something in return." Well, he didn't kill me. He took off his backpack. It was a book. The book. He said, "Pick a book." He was one of those book peddlers. I'd pick a book out of 20.
Yeah.
It was called Mockingbird.
So wait a minute. He was going to
That's how I
rob
became a
you,
writer.
and
Yes.
he gave you a book?
Yes.
This is like the strangest story. Only in New York.
I know. And then he said, "Give me whatever money you have in your pocket." And I had $15. I don't know what I had. I gave it to him. I took this book. It sat on my shelf literally for 2 years. I go to Hawaii. Someone invites me there. I go to Hawaii. I pick up this book. I can't put it down. I have to option the book.
Oh, my God.
I thought it would be cheap.
Yeah.
The book was so expensive in that day because the man had written The Color of Money and The Hustler.
Oh,
and this
my
was his
God.
last book. I'm trying to remember his name. I'm having a blank before he passed on. So then I get all my friends to put money in this like a horse,
Yeah.
because I was coming from the horse world and you had syndicates.
Yeah.
So I syndicated the option for $40,000 with all my friends. And so then it comes down that everyone I met with, and I went on the whole trail as a producer to get this book done. And we were looking for writers, and every writer, and these famous writers, would say, "You can't do it. It's a what do you call it? It's a diary."
Yeah.
So it came down that my option was running out in 3 months, and I was going to have to face my friends and go, "I lost your money."
Yeah.
And instead, I bought the book, Sid Field, How to Write a Screenplay. I read it, I sat down, I wrote it, and I became George Dupin and sold the script.
Oh, my God.
I got everyone their money back. And Steve...
What a fabulous story.
Oh, it's
and
great.
what was the name of the script?
It's called Mockingbird, but Steve Tisch and New Line Cinema bought it.
Oh, my God.
Isn't
and
that
that's
funny?
the first one you sold?
That's the first script I ever sold.
But it never got made.
No.
Yeah.
It should be made now. It really should. I don't know who owns the option on the book, but...
Well, I think a lot of people would like to know your background because it is pretty fascinating. So you grew up partially in Connecticut, but by the time you were 7, your mom and you left your dad and because he was an alcoholic. You shared with me that was a very dark time in your life.
It was.
But
he was still a great man.
And
despite of it.
as people can be when they're alcoholics, it doesn't make them a bad person. It just makes them an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
So you came out here to Santa Monica, and because your mom had been married to J. Paul Getty, you had an opportunity to grow up in the beach house here in Santa Monica.
That's right.
So what was that?
It was a great house.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must have been a fabulous house.
Yeah.
I'd say a great house was probably an understatement.
I loved being spoiled. That's all I can tell you. And oddly enough, as a child, I never took it for granted. And I think I don't want to talk about my mom too much because I'll cry, but I think it's because my mom was such a good mother. Like she was always about work and work and work, cleaning your room and work. And so
And she lived to be 103, right?
Yeah, and none of us knew her age till she had broken her neck, actually.
Oh, my gosh.
Like my whole life. My mom lied about her age 20 years.
Yeah, they did that back then, I think.
Yeah,
I know my mom was 29 for like 30 years.
Oh, yeah. And and she changed her passport and everything.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
wow.
because she was in Italy during the war, studying opera, but also because she was on these lists, they thought she was a spy.
Well, let's talk about that story for 1 second because it's so unbelievable. So J. Paul Getty didn't want your mom to be an actress. She came here to be an actress in L.A. He instead suggested that she be an opera star because
of her voice.
Her voice.
She had
and
an amazing voice.
He said there's, actresses are a dime a dozen, but
Correct.
how many opera stars are there?
Or sopranos.
Or soprano, okay. So she went off to Europe
to study
and
to become something.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was around World War II, right?
Before, but right. World War II broke out while she was in Italy.
Oh, my gosh. So tell...
And he kept trying to get her to come home, and my mom is stubborn and wanted to become something. And she basically said to him, you don't want me like all your other wives to come home and be a housewife. You fell in love with me because I was trying to achieve something.
Right.
And I can't come back a failure.
Right.
And so she risked her life, literally, to stay there, to become something. And they were very similar. And I just want to say for the record that all these Getty things that have been out, the one with Scott and Michelle Williams and all these people, and the one that on FX is doing, they're such BS.
Yeah, it's not the man you knew.
No, he was a great man. I mean, he was so compassionate and so, listen, I'm sure in business, he was tough as hell and ruthless. I know as a husband for my mother, it was very tough. My mom could deal with the infidelity because they had a humor in dealing with it, And one little story from her book, which she wrote, an amazing book called Alone Together. At the age of 100, she wrote it, and she wrote how he had brought a woman up to the Getty Villa, which was known as the Getty Ranch when they lived there. And they didn't live there completely. They lived more in the beach house. But she saw him, and she was like pregnant like this, and of course feeling unattractive and all this stuff. So she ran up and let out their their lion. They had a pet lion called Elsa, and the lion goes running across the lawn, and this woman screamed and, ran away. And, of course, he knew that she had done that, and she waved to him. And he was like, so they had a great sense of humor, and he was just such a great, compassionate man to me. And he said so many great, he was the man who came in and told me that my father died. He literally came in, sat down, started playing soldiers with me because I was a bit of a tomboy, and then told me about my dad.
Wow.
And said, I want to help you. I mean, this is so.
Let me backtrack for 1 second, though. Your mom was in Europe when the World War II broke out.
Right.
They thought she was a spy.
Correct.
And you told me a really gripping story about how she just narrowly escaped the camps because she was Jewish, right? Half Jewish.
Yeah.
Had they known that, she would have been to the camps.
Yes.
Yeah. But how did she escape that?
Well, here's the thing is that when she was taken out of her house,
oh my God,
brought in front of, at the Regina Coeli, that's where Tosca throws herself off, in the opera, and that's the police, the jail in Rome. And she was standing in front of all these men, and they were like, she's not a Jew. Look at her nose. It's chiseled. She's not this. She's not that. And they were going through trying to ask her what she was. And the one man that was sitting there, and someday I will make this movie on my mom when everyone has forgotten how horrible the J. Paul Getty that they created last year is, because he is not that man.
Right.
And neither are his family. I mean, his son, Gordon Getty's fantastic. All the Gettys that I know are fantastic people. But they looked at the man that was looking at her when they said, are you a Jew? And she's staring at this man. And she said no. And that man knew.
He knew she was?
Yes, because Paul had gone to him to say, how do I get my wife out? Is she safe? Will my name protect her? Because they got married in Rome. And it was Mussolini's lawyer.
Wow.
And I don't know how or why he was in that cell, I mean in that prison. And he looked at her and she looked at him, and they said, don't look at him. Look at us. And that man did not say a thing.
And she had to sign a paper saying she wasn't Jewish,
and if that man had given her away,
she
would be over.
Wow. But and I want to make this point. She had to sign a paper saying she
Correct.
wasn't Jewish. I mean, that's like...
And sign a paper, which I don't think history even knows about, but I have it at home. She signed a paper to the Americans, too, to the United States of America. She had to sign 2 documents.
That she wasn't Jewish?
Yeah. And had,
Or
not,
they wouldn't let her
had not
in?
a drop of Jewish blood.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's just the thing about J. Paul Getty. I just want to say one last thing. Example, they all said he hated Jews. Why'd he marry my mother?
Right. Right.
Okay, there's just so much on there. Now,
That's
I
not
have
true.
to say, because my mother was persecuted by her stepfather, she did hide that I had any Jewish blood until I was 30.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no idea, and because of her situation in Italy. So, I mean, she always kept it hidden.
Wow, that is really
Yeah.
scary,
She was
isn't
a
it?
great woman. I love my mom.
It's scary what's going on in this country right now. With,
Terrifying, the hate.
Anti-Semitism.
Terrifying.
And
even the hatred between Republicans and Democrats. I mean,
yes,
when I was a kid, and I don't know if it was the same with you, I used to sit at a table with both.
of course.
And they actually had conversations.
Right. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. Let's hope it, like, maybe,
can get
I have
back
a
to
feeling
that.
maybe now that we've taken back the house that maybe there's
Yeah.
a possibility.
Maybe levels the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
And you did tell me that J. Paul Getty told you what made America great.
Yes. He said the middle class.
Isn't that so
Middle
true?
America. And so...
So interesting from such a wealthy man that he
from
said
so
that.
long ago. And he said
Yeah.
when middle America... And he also said when the press is controlled, too. He said the fact that we have freedom of press is very important.
So he said when we don't have the middle class or when the press is controlled, we won't have a democracy. And that's why what just happened in this election was so important, right? That we keep all those benefits that allow there to be a middle class so that
Right.
people can afford health care and afford all of these things that make a middle class. Yeah, so it's a trying time.
I think we're in a very interesting time, and I think we're actually going to be a better country.
I think
I
so,
think
too.
something's. I think once the hatred. I mean, listen, we've all hated. I've never really hated, but I mean, we've all disliked something
Yeah.
or someone. That gets in your way.
Yes.
And that's like the fires. You know,
Right.
the fires are like the hate, and then you rebuild.
Right.
So I really think we're in a place if we can get past the hatred and look at that other person
Right.
and try to see the good in them and see where we can connect.
Right.
So we can find a way to bridge our opinions and do something good. My mom's last request, because she died in my arms, and it's like really incredible. I took my first breath in her arms, and she took her last in mine. She said 2 things to me. She said, one, I thought she was going to say, I love you. Instead, she took my hand and she said, be strong, don't quit. Now, that's a very deep
beautiful.
thing to say to a child before you leave.
How old were you?
It was last year.
Just last year. Wow.
And then,
And that does seem like you.
and
You seem
she's
strong and you don't quit.
yeah, it's true. I'm like my dad, which we discussed.
Yeah.
I wish he hadn't quit because he wrote a play and it closed on Broadway in 2 weeks, and he ended his
you
career.
come from a very creative family, as far as your actual family.
But the other thing she said, I just want to say, is she said, do something good for the world.
Oh, I love that.
You know, and that was the last minute of her existence on
Wow,
this
she
planet.
sounds like an amazing woman.
Yeah,
Talk
she
about a
was.
strong woman. Look what
I'm
she
not as
went
strong
through.
like her. It's so not.
I don't know. I think you inherited that from her.
I hope so. I hope I
Yeah.
can make her proud from a cloud up there.
Yeah. So she actually did acting on Broadway. You
Mm-hmm.
were telling me she used to hang at the Algonquin, which is one of my favorite places to stay in New York City.
Yes. Well, she left her house and she auditioned for J.J. Schubert, which is also in her book Alone Together. I think you would really like that book.
I would. I
and
would check that out.
And she was like 15.
Yeah.
She took the train in, didn't tell her mother where she was. She stayed forever because she didn't know she had to have an appointment.
Yeah.
But they kept her waiting. She finally got in to see him. The rain started. He was terrified of rain. How interesting. This
Yeah.
powerful man. She goes, hold on 1 minute. She ran downstairs, got him an elephant from one of those gift stores.
Yeah.
Set it on his desk and said, there, Mr. Schubert, he will protect you. You'll never be afraid of the rain again. And he said, really? And she goes, yeah. And he goes, okay, well, now I can listen to you. Go play something for me. She played something for him, sang. He got her a job in the chorus, and he sent her home in his car.
Oh, my
Isn't
God.
that cute? And
she
was,
sounds amazing.
and she was like, what is my mother going to think? He said, don't tell her. So, she got a job at 15 in the chorus of some show. I should know
Not
this.
for nothing, but this reminds me of the story you just told me about writing the script and submitting it under some guy's name. It's
You're right.
I'm telling you, the apple doesn't fall far from
Maybe
the tree.
you're right. Well, that's a great compliment.
So, so your mom was an actress, and your dad,
my dad was
created
a lawyer.
a Broadway play.
Yeah, and a lawyer as well. But he created and he ran for Congress, lost by 35 votes to Henry Cabot Lodge, and quit.
Wow.
Which I wouldn't have quit.
Right. So you've always said your mom was one that didn't quit, and your dad, as much as he accomplished, he was kind of like, hey, if it didn't work out, he'd quit, and you didn't want to be that person.
Well, I don't know that much. Like my niece Frances knows much more than me about my dad, and probably my brother Jim, you know, they're great people, and they live, like my dad had islands in Maine, and he was a very big romantic guy, I think. Claire Booth Luce, if you read her book, who wrote The Women, she wrote a lot of it there. What I learned that in his island in Maine, which I went to during the summers, I never understood why the dining room was up. You took 4 steps up in this log cabin that he built, which was amazing. I wish I'd shown you pictures. Well, everyone came there to workshop their plays.
Wow. Cool.
So it was a stage.
Yeah.
You know, including Claire Booth Luce. And so I think she did, but I know all the other, you know, Algonquin people did. But
and then you were telling me on that side of the family, your actual father, the great-grandfather was like the governor of Massachusetts.
My father's father was governor of Massachusetts and also mayor of Boston first.
Yeah, and used to hang with like Roosevelt and
I think that's why. And he was also a very good friend of J. Paul Getty.
Right.
So and drove J. Paul Getty to the engagement party with my mother. How funny is that? Yeah.
So here you're hanging with J. Paul Getty, you know, grandpa's Roosevelt. You've always been surrounded by these powerful people. You were sharing with me, flying over with Getty to London, meeting with queens and dukes and.
You know, he had them at his house.
Yeah. You just had them at your house.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah. I was just there at dinner.
Yeah. And then your mom would have parties with like Betty Davis and.
Right.
I forget some of the others you mentioned.
Like so many people. I mean, Gypsy Rose Lee and Bob Stack and Imogene Coca and Paul Lynn and
oh my God,
I mean, so many really fun people like Joan Crawford. I mean, just different. Cole Porter.
Wow.
You know, just they were wild, great parties, and these people were incredible. But here's what they all had: they all worked.
Yeah.
And it's all about the work in life. It is all about the work.
Right.
You know, it's not about going shopping at Gucci, you know.
Right.
It's about working.
And they all love the
work,
business. Yeah.
The work, yeah. And the art of it. And
so I can see how growing up around that you were inspired to be a writer and a movie producer, and a director, although I do think a lot of that's innate, you know.
Well, you know, I think
our gifts are innate.
I don't know about the director part. I really owe Sophie B. Hawkins that, because when I was doing this documentary, I kept complaining about the DPs, and she said, "You know what, Gigi? No one's allowed to set a foot on my stage, but you. Go learn to run a camera."
Oh my God!
And I was like, I don't even know how to take a Polaroid. You know? So she really pushed me.
And this was the documentary that you did.
Yeah, The Cream Will Rise, which was amazing because it started out as like an EPK for Sony.
Yeah.
And it went into this whole thing about sexual abuse. And it was way before its time.
And
we opened every festival in the world, like huge festivals.
And The Cream Will Rise was Sophie's personal story.
Correct.
Which was kind of dark, you said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had to overcome a lot, and I commend her.
And you both, you mentioned the sexual abuse, and for yourself with your equestrian coach. I know you mentioned that you had that.
Just came out last June in the New York Times.
So I applaud you for that, for tackling that and bringing that out in the open as this Me Too thing, you know, is evolving and coming out. And it's really great for strong women to come out and tell that story. So that's wonderful that you tackled that in the New York Times. How did that feel when that came out? Well, it wasn't just
me. It was 3 of us, really. Well, there was a lot more there. I think 35 people were interviewed, but there was 3 of us at this barn. And I hope to be able to develop this into like a mini series type thing, limited series, because the interesting thing is in sexual abuse is like they try to separate you.
Yeah.
And I think and us 3 girls never knew it was happening to the other.
Right.
And, you know, were we friends? Sure. But when we were on the horse, we were competitors.
Right.
And we each came from a different point of view. And hearing what went on to the other two girls, and if we had just known.
Yeah, if you had known.
You know, but they keep you like this.
Right. See, one doesn't know that the other one's going through the same thing.
Yeah, and then that's your competitor, and you have to, you know, you want to win, you want to beat that girl, so you stay like this, and you're in your own thing, dealing with your own trauma.
Right.
And you're like going, God, I wish I was her. And her was getting it as much as, you know, me. It was just incredible. And the people around these people that know what's going on.
Was it...
And don't say a thing.
Was it healing to tell the story?
Well, I first thought I wasn't important in it compared to the other girl who really was tortured. You know, and I thought, well, I was only really nailed twice, so to speak. Yeah, were we made out with all the time? Yes.
Oh, gosh.
And, you know, I just dealt with it. It's like, it was like doing a bad exercise and going, okay, it's going to be over in a minute. Someone's going to walk by. He's going to pull away. And then I can get back to learning how to ride and win.
Right.
But
I'm sorry that you went through that, but I like that you're thinking about a miniseries about that.
Well, because it's to help other kids, so other kids can't have that happen.
Right.
And other kids can't do what we did, which was keep our mouths shut.
And this goes back to what your mom said, and that's do something great in the world. And that's what you're doing. You're using your gifts.
Well, I'm going to do that. And she left me a water well in Texas with pure water. And as you know, water's the new oil.
Yeah.
And I want to not only start this water, because she had sold it to all the movie stars. It was written up in Time magazine. Mm-hmm. And I want to restart it. And I want to give a lot of that water and like since we're in Texas, send it down to Mexico where they have terrible water. Do you know Mexico's like the third country in the world with bad water? Right. Free.
Yeah.
You know, just put it on a train.
Sorry,
Trump. You may not like it. I should call it Trump water. No, but I just want to send it down there and give to them and give it to different countries. And then, of course, sell it too and have the sales support the gift.
I love that.
And that would be doing something. And then we could refurbish the town. Yeah. And recreate the town and get them jobs. They need jobs. So I have a lot on my plate.
I love what you're thinking. I want to have you back when you do that so we can tell about that.
And we can try the water. I should have brought you a bottle.
I love that.
It tastes great.
Thanks for all the wonderful work you're doing.
Thank you.
Every capacity. Well, and I'm looking forward to the film when it comes out, maybe next year.
And it's called Dixie Silver,
Dixie Silver next year?
And Mary Verneu's casting, and I'm very grateful to her. She's an amazing casting director.
Dixie Silver. We'll be looking for it.
Yeah.
Bravo. Yay for director women. We love it.
Keep going.
So we will be back next week. Tune in with us every Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in today. Make it a great week. Hugs and happiness.